Welcome to the fifth edition of our web series, which is called The Think Tank. My name is Ankit Bansal. I'm the founder and CEO of Sapphire Human Solutions. As you would have seen in the presentation, we are a retained executive search firm. I founded the firm in 2008, and over the last 12 years, now we've accomplished more than 900 CXOs with over 180 clients across sectors like BFSI, tech, consulting, industrials, pharma, healthcare, infrastructure, and real estate. Think Tank is essentially a melting pot of some of the most fertile brains in the country coming together to share and exchange thoughts, ideas with industry stalwarts. And to guide us and advise us today, we've got somebody I think who's really one of the, when it comes to rankings, the highest stalwarts one can think of or have in the entire private equity venture capital space in India. As we all know, Dhanpal is the vice chairman of Everstone Group, which has over $5 billion investments across private equity, real estate, green infrastructure, venture capital, and credit. He's also the CEO of Eversource Capital, which is a joint venture between Lightsource BP and Everstone Capital to make green, sustainable investments in India. He's got 24 years of experience in corporate finance and strategy. Some of his previous roles include being the director of corporate strategy at Vedanta, head of investment banking at ICICI Securities, and partner at KPMG. He's the past president of TIE in Mumbai. He serves as a board member of IMC and the Climate Change Committee of CII. He's a Bachelor of Commerce from Mumbai University and an MBA from Babson College. Dhanpal, it's our utter pleasure and joy to have you with us today. Thank you so much for taking time out. Well, we also have, some really bright, minds, smartest, brightest CEOs in India Inc. and the India startup space. I'm going to request everybody to quickly introduce their company or startup to us. That would be fantastic. So first up, can I request Vineet Tyagi, who's the co-founder of Biz2Credit, to talk about his startup.
Big hello to all the fellow participants, and hi to Dhanpal, and thank you for organizing this session and sharing your thoughts, which you're going to share about Biz2Credit. Biz2Credit is a lender. We are like an equivalent of an NBFC in US. We run a portfolio of about $3 billion, totally done digitally, focused on small businesses. Our tech and development happens from India. So looking forward to a wonderful discussion and gaining from the discussions today. Thank you.
So I'm Sriram, founder and CEO of Integra Software, based out of Pondicherry. So we are operating in 6 countries and 10 centers. So we started with 5 people. Today we are 2,000 plus, and servicing for all the educational publishers and corporates on the L&D area. Thank you. Thanks for inviting.
Raktib.
Yeah, thank you, Ankit, for calling me again here. So we are into nutritional science space. We are addressing the oncology space through the nutritional interventions. We have our R&D in Hyderabad and companies based at Mumbai. Thank you.
My name is Pratap Chandra, and I'm the co-founder and CEO for Fifth Vital. We are into diagnostic space, and we certainly do a couple of other at-home healthcare services, ECG and all that stuff. So I have, we have the operations in a couple of cities in India, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, and a couple of other cities. So we are a young organization trying to grow as much as we can in this COVID scenario, and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks. Have a good day.
Amit, good to have you again.
Thanks, Ankit. Thanks for inviting me. Very quickly, Mind Financial Services is a fintech lender focused on solving the problem of supply chain financing. We are based out of Gurgaon. As a marketplace, we don't have a balance sheet. We partner with respective banks and BFC. So we have about 6 partner lenders as of now, and hoping to grow the book soon. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, and look forward to hearing the pulse of wisdom from Dharmesh. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure meeting you all. This is Krishna. I founded Inspire-Rides in 2012. We are specialized in unified communications, primarily into IT managed services. We manage large IT infrastructure for global, Fortune 500 companies based in Europe and US mostly. We have an operations center in Hyderabad and Vizag. With our sales and marketing forces in US. We have presence in North Carolina and New Jersey as a sales team. Most of our team operates from Vizag, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh. Pleasure meeting you all.
Hello team, this is Dr. Somyakant. There's some problem in video. So we are relatively a young startup. What we do is that we work in the space of connected healthcare. We give end-to-end platform that empowers care providers and hospitals and clinics and organizations, corporates, to provide connected care to their employees, patients, and people. So basically, we operate in the B2C space. What we do is that we increase interoperability, and we are entering into a space where through inferences we are changing habits of people in the healthcare space.
Sanjay, over to you.
Hi, good morning all. Good morning, Dhanpal. Hi guys. I'm based in London and I have business in India. I run a chain of co-working and managed office services in India, spread across 30 cities, and have some investments into India. Looking forward to hearing thoughts from Dhanpal and all the fellow participants on what times we are currently facing. So look forward. Thank you.
So I'm Anurag. I've been 20 years in the listed equity space. My last assignment was as Chief Investment Officer of Canara HSBC Life Insurance. Started this venture with a couple of friends of mine. It's essentially a portfolio management services company, primarily looking at listed equity space. We manage funds for many family offices and high net worth individuals. Essentially long only public listed space. Thanks so much for having me here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good morning everyone. I'm Vineet, and it's my pleasure to introduce ThoughtSol Infotech. We are one of the leading IT system integration company based out of Delhi, and our key focus is helping the customers in the digital transformation journey, and largely our essential target audience is mid to large companies. I am also delighted to just share with you all that day before yesterday we have been nominated amongst the top 50 best places for women 2020 by Great Place to Work, to the next of biggies like Tech Mahindras and Ericssons and G. Thank you.
Ninesh, we run chain of co-working centers, same managed offices. We also work with startups. We work with Atal incubation centers. We work with various business models. We run entrepreneurship development programs across Bombay and Pune. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and love to hear more on it as well, because it's been hurting a lot of businesses, I believe. Yeah.
Girish?
Yeah. Hello everyone. Pleasure to meet all. I run a startup called G-Class e-learning app. It basically caters to the state board and vernacular school students in our country, which is one of the largest sector when we call it as a Naya Bharat. There are more than 200 million students studying in this sector. And we are trying to cater to the this sector, for starting with Maharashtra as the base. And one of the strongest differentiator of us with the other edtechs is our focus is to support and empower teachers and students with average to slow learning capacity. So we are looking at raising our first round to scale this startup and make it big and meet our targets of reaching out to 10 million students in next 3 years. We are based out of Pune. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mahesh here. Thank you. We run a private equity fund called Amicus Capital. We typically make growth equity investments of 8 to 15 million across 4 sectors, which is really healthcare, consumer, technology, and financial services.
Hi, Vikram.
Okay, so we run a chain of unisex salon by the name Enrich.
Got presence in 6 cities, Mumbai and Pune in Maharashtra, Vadodara, Surat and Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and Bangalore in Karnataka. Overall, 85 stores, servicing around 130,000 customers a month. Got a team of around 2,000 people. And yes, we've been in this business for almost 20 years now.
Very pleased, to have all of you. Thank you so much for taking time out. I don't think every day we get, a chance to peek into the mindset of somebody who's, got over $5 billion invested in India. So what really is the mindset of a new age capitalist? How are they looking at this current situation? How do they zero in, on their investments? So to talk about that, and much more, without further ado, can I request the man himself, Dhanpal Zaveri, to talk through his discussion today. Dhanpal, over to you. Thank you.
Ankit, thanks a lot for having me here, and I think you've said a few things which kind of tend to inflate what I can add in terms of the value to this group. It's interesting cohort that you've brought together, because I think there's a very interesting mix of people from different sectors, from different stages in their life cycle of their businesses, and clearly people who are both on capital provision side as well as the people who use capital to create value. And what I thought is, when Ankit reached out to me and I said that, look, there are lots of things we can talk about, but what would be interesting from my perspective would be to give you a little bit of insight of how our journey has been as Everstone over the last 13, 14 years, investing capital in India and in the region, and how we've kind of, I would say, just used our lessons, many of them very hard-learned lessons, and I use the term scars on our backs, to basically then try and define what we have become and what we intend to become going forward. So I think first and foremost, this business was set up by my partners about 14 years ago. I joined them a little shortly later. And since 2007, we've been building what we thought was initially a private equity business focused on investing in the new India. So we were in our initial life, we were essentially backing entrepreneurs. We were backing the macros in India. And when you look at India from an outside-in perspective, as someone, at that point in time, we had no experience investing in India. The one, thing which we constantly kept getting fed was a story about how great India was, how great the demographics were, how great the market opportunity is, how everything is fantastic, and how everything is, something that needs to be done there. And our first phase of investing was all about that, right? Backing entrepreneurs, taking minority positions. And very soon, reality struck when global financial crisis came upon, I would say pretty much every part of the world, including India. India was not directly affected, but I think the consequences of what happened in the US and in Europe, the meltdown of the markets over there, the meltdown of Wall Street, which led to basically Main Street also getting impacted, very quickly had its collateral damage in India. And I think many of you, if you go back to 2008, September, when, Lehman collapsed and, a whole host of things happened after that, we ourselves realized that we were pretty much, like you say, right, when the tide goes out, you really know who's swimming and who's not. And that's pretty much what happened with our portfolio. A lot of our businesses were young. A lot of our businesses had very little moats and very little resilience. And many situations where, as minority investors, we knew exactly what was happening, and our ability, or rather inability, to do anything about it was what really we realized was our biggest, I would say, weakness as we were looking to build a private investing business. So post that kind of very expensive lesson, right, that we learned, we actually pivoted our entire business model. And there was always one point which kind of continued to always bother us, is that whenever we would go and partner with companies and provide capital to them, the entrepreneur, and a lot of you over here are entrepreneurs and you raise capital and, and I congratulate you all on all those efforts. The entrepreneur clearly came in basically with his talent, with his abilities or her abilities, and the ability to basically create value with someone else's capital. And we constantly kept kind of challenging that model in our heads. We kept saying that, really, what if we just separate talent and capital and address those two things separately, where we have the capital, we bring in the right set of talent, and then actually go about and pretty much create businesses ourselves. I think those were the kind of, I would say, the foundations coming out of the crisis, and then basically trying to rebuild what we thought was a strategy about how we would address India as a market and as an opportunity. Is something was, I would say, laid the seeds of what we have created as you, Ankit, call it a $5 billion business today. So if I fast forward to where we are today, we have built, from the initial private equity business, which now is kind of, I would say, 45% of our overall AUM, $2.3 billion. We built a real estate investing business where we decided to go out and build a focus on industrial real estate in 2009, when I don't believe if you talk to any of the large real estate consultants or the large developers in India, they didn't even think that industrial real estate was a separate asset class within the real estate industry at that point in time. And that is what we saw as an opportunity, that really India was going to, and again, sometimes these opportunities play itself ahead of time. We saw the GST regulations being talked about. We saw the opportunity for India becoming one market from, at that point in time, 24 or 25 markets. And we saw the opportunity for businesses, therefore, to align their entire supply chain and completely change the business models and the way they would deal with storage and transportation of goods. And that's how we thought about building a brand called Indospace, which today now manages $2 billion of capital. We've built more than 30 million square feet, where we've bought land, developed it, built and constructed these warehouses, leased them out, and we've got over 100 multinationals now who've tenanted it from us. And we essentially now have flipped it into a private REIT, where basically we have CPPIB as a partner, and we kind of manage that entire business through a very, very large team now we've built on the ground. Similarly, I think, we've gone about and built a venture business. Ankit talked about our green business, which now I'm kind of, 2.5 years ago, we saw this opportunity and we went about setting that up. And now we've built a green infrastructure investing business. And we are actually, as we speak, building a credit business, which is basically focused on private credit. And I see a lot of you are in the financial services industry, and you know what's happened over the last 3 years to credit in India. We ourselves built a company called Indostar Capital, which we grew very successfully, took it public, very successful IPO. And then ILFS happened, and a lot of you know what happened as a consequence of ILFS. And we basically managed to, capitalize the business just before COVID happened. Brookfield came in and invested $200 million in the business, and we've now reinventing that business to take it into what I call its third avatar as Indostar continues its journey to build a credit business in India. So really speaking, I think all of these experiences, lessons, the joy of building something, creating something, at the same time, the pains of having to deal with the volatility that India as a market offers, the challenges, right? I always said that someone asked me just after I was doing one of these webinars in April, what do you think the government should do? I said, if you're going to wait for something that the government has to do, I think you're not in the right business. And if you are in that kind of a business where you have to wait for the government to do something, I think you should basically pivot your model and do something where you don't have to rely on the government. Because one thing we very clearly understood, that India is not, an easy market to put money to work and create value. My good friend Mahesh has also learned it the hard way, and he's also obviously had great success through those lessons that he's learned. But the important thing that we realized, and I think if you ask me, one big trend we saw was clearly that the age of crony capitalism and the local Indian promoter / developer was fast kind of disappearing or becoming, in my view, a rarefied kind of a breed. And there was a new age in our mind of and I would say a capitalist who would come in, provide transparency, provide governance, provide, the entrepreneurial freedom, provide a very high quality professional environment. And then finally, and most importantly, I would say the two factors which we look for is provide rapid scalability, which capital provides, and intervenes in market spaces or market opportunities within the local landscape to, I would say, go and build. And you've heard of blue ocean theories and all of that stuff. But India has a lot of that. And we believe that there are lots and lots of gaps and open areas in India where you could build businesses very rapidly without necessarily having to tread over multiple toes and feet of different kind of businesses, right? And create your own space within the Indian kind of ecosystem. So that's what something that we have done. As a business, one, bet on ourselves. Two, use capital as a differentiator. Three, partnered with very high quality professionals whom we've brought in as partners. And one thing we often say in our business is we don't really differentiate in terms of who owns what stake in the business. We differentiate in terms of who has what skin in the game. And many a times the professionals who come in and partner with us to basically build very high quality businesses have a lot more skin in the game in terms of the capital they are putting in place, in terms of the total net worth that they own or they have as a business for themselves, vis-a-vis what really we are kind of, and I like to again use another analogy, which is am I the pig or am I the hen, right? I like to be the hen in the equation. I like my partner who comes in, who puts his or her blood, sweat, and tears to basically create the business as being the pig. Because as we all know, the pig gives its life for bringing food to the table, whether the hen just lays eggs. So really speaking, I think this journey for us has been a lot about that, creating the right kind of constructs around which we've built businesses. And this has spread across, like I said, wide range of different industries, subsectors, and opportunities. And finally, I think taking a fairly, I would say, long-term patient view about what one needs to do in India, because, and we've now, I think we've had the flexibility in some of our businesses to be able to deploy capital globally, leverage the Indian capabilities, but not necessarily be bound by the Indian, I would say, constructs or frameworks around which you need to be doing business. And a lot of you who seem to be in the technology side, who seem to have business models which kind of can transcend geographic boundaries, I would encourage you to continue to pursue those kind of areas where you are not necessarily bound by India as a geography, but really look to see how you can leverage and transport your models into markets which really are much more open and much more kind of conducive to your kind of business models. So really for us, it's been a very fascinating journey, very, very difficult, very trying. We've pretty much experienced everything an Indian promoter experiences in India, the strong hand of the law, the challenges of, fighting and, competing against incumbents, the difficulties of building businesses in industries or sectors which are essentially fragmented or unorganized or where there is no real industry structure, all kinds of things. And I think, the two things we really continue to always, I would say, bet on is the people we bring on as partners in these businesses. And many a times there are existing entrepreneurs who become our partners, professionals, like I said, who come in and become partners. And two is ourselves, right? To just keep, like I say, having the resilience and go through and continue to, I would say, adapt ourselves to market conditions. I could talk a lot more, but I just thought that given that we've got a reasonably diverse cohort over here, it'd be good to take questions and to maybe then, share my experiences and my views around those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dhanpal, for taking us through that wonderful, fantastic journey. Please just raise your hands and I'll call out, and then we can have a Q&A session with Dhanpal. Amit, please go ahead with your question, please.
A couple of questions from my side. One is something that you alluded to, which is that disruptive events like Lehman, like Corona, while they bring a lot of pain, volatility, which is pretty much seen across the board, what they also do is they do something which is very healthy in the long term. They do expose the structural weaknesses or inefficiencies in business models. How do you see this space pan out now? Is it a space which has been written off by the investors, or they are looking at this as a space where one should figure out who stands, who does not?
Oh, Amit, one of the things we always say about financial services is that the second oldest business in the world. There's no real innovation you can do in finance. And everything that we've seen is really innovation around business models rather than really what you are doing at the ground level, right? Is especially credit per se. You're solving someone's need to basically either consume something or either use it to basically create something. And everything that we do in the credit business is fundamentally around those two needs. In that context, I think the two things that you have to be extremely focused on, I would say, is really the agility with which your business can adapt. And two is how quickly are you going to become irrelevant or obsolete as compared to someone else down the street?
Yeah, I have a basic question here. When you go for investing in a second round of as a second round of investor, if you find the financials or other hygienes are okay, then what are those behavioral aspects of an entrepreneur that discourages you to invest there as a second round investor?
Look, we've stopped that model some time back. Okay, we have it in our venture business, but where we do it as first round rather than a second round, and we'll do a follow-on second round. We need to have not just the entrepreneur's kind of vision and a buy into that, but a very clear understanding and articulation of how that actually will get executed. And the time frame we look at is not like a 10-year period, we look at it over a 3-year time frame. Because the biggest problem for businesses, like we say, right, before we've given the capital, the entrepreneur has the vision and we have the capital. After we've given the capital, the entrepreneur has the capital and we have the vision. So we can't have that kind of a thing that we are chasing your vision because we've given you the capital and then now we hope that you can make it happen.
So I am first generation entrepreneur and I'm into edtech. So when you refer to the opportunity currently, if you see in last 9 months, more than 1.1 billion has been invested in edtechs in India. So just a follow-up question that when it comes to the feedback that I'm getting is I need more adoption. Currently, I have a 1.5 lakh downloads. So for me to get 1 million or a 2 million download is where I'm raising funds to plan the go-to-market and everything. So it's like a chicken and egg story. How do I reach there? There is a huge feedback. Adoption is growing, but it's organic, very slow. And with this space, maybe I'll take...
That's the same issue. You need capital for growth and people have to believe your story. So.
Yeah.
Right. Someone has to come in and basically say, look, I believe this and I want to fund this and I want to make it happen. Right. But sometimes also that beyond that, what, right? There is the answer beyond that, right? When you get to the million, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And is there someone else who's going to then fund beyond that million, right?
Yeah.
What are you really doing which you're kind of making it work? And look, there's no easy answer to what you've said. I would just say that just the pool of capital is growing. And you may start finding pools of capital from parts of the world which are not, necessarily even exposed to India, right? Or pockets, right? I've got a colleague who is a board member on the Thai Mumbai board, which I have. He set about building a angel investing business, and he's now built angel groups in, 50, 60, 70 cities in India.
Okay.
Right? The small towns in India are putting capital to work into startups, right? Where small entrepreneurs who maybe, rich, they may have a nice steel mill or they may have some textile business or whatever it is. They want to put money in a startup, right? So this guy went and tapped into I would say the tier 2 India, right? Not the tier 1 India. And there's a lot of capital, as you know, there's a lot of wealth even in tier 2 India, right? And found those guys and basically said, okay, look, I'm creating this whole funnel of startups and I'm going to be putting my own capital wherever I go and back it. and I'd like to raise $1 million, $2 million for each of these guys. And, we may put with maybe a 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. I don't know what his model is, but he's successfully done it. So I don't know, but I think you have to be, and you need the cash, right, to survive this till you found that next round of money. Yeah. So these are very hard and difficult decisions, but you have to take that call.